Day. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about another very important topic. Now, sometimes I have certain topics lined up for the day, and then I kind of check in with myself, my higher self, my guides, whoever you want to call them, and I ask, is this what I'm supposed to be talking about today? So I was ready to talk about something else this morning, and then this topic came in and it kind of pushed the other topic to the side. Now, normally I don't ask questions, but today I was a little hesitant to talk about this topic, and I don't know why. It's something I share with many people. It's something that unfortunately is very common. But what's not so common is the people that are stuck in these type of relationships with self or other people. We're going to talk about codependency today. And I want to touch a little bit on how it is a little stressful, how you have a hard time kind of finding yourself when you are living in codependency. And it could be with yourself, it could be with a romantic partner, it could be with your children, it could be with, pretty much anyone. It could be a boss at work. So it doesn't discriminate as to who you tend to be codependent on. So I think that today what I want to do is kind of put it out there for self-awareness. Okay. Many times when I get on here, we'll talk about certain topics that I've had experiences with, certain things that I see like in clients or the people that I've had the privilege of working with. This is something that I find very often in relationships. And can I tell you that most people have no idea that they are a codependent person? They just have no clue. Maybe because the word isn't thrown around as much, maybe because you grew up watching people in these type of relationships and it's actually very common to you. And what we do is we just continue to repeat, right? So today, I got on here a little bit later and I just kept thinking, well, what do I want to say about this, right? Because it's such a broad subject. And I want to keep it short and simple. And the intention that I'm setting for you guys this morning is for you guys to ask yourself these questions and to see if there is any codependency in you, in somebody you know. Again, we're not going to run and tell this person, oh my gosh, you're codependent, right? We're not going to do that because it's kind of like throwing a cold bucket of water on people because they might know it, but then when we share it with them, it kind of hits them like a ton of bricks, you guys. And one would say, oh my gosh, it's so obvious now that I know what it is, but it's not to many people. And here's the kicker, you guys. What do you do when you find out you are in a codependent relationship, right? And the reason why I say relationship is because you have to be a codependent individual and you take that into a relationship, right? Which makes you somebody who is codependent in a relationship. So we just title that something fancy, but it is the individual. Many times when I do marriage counseling, when I do marriage coaching, we bring out a whole bunch of stuff. And many people do believe that it's something that you got together as a couple. But what I help people understand is that you are two individuals in a relationship. And whatever baggage you brought into that relationship, we're expecting the other person to unpack. We start blaming other people. When you have to start asking yourself, how did I attract this type of relationship? And what am I, this denominator, the common denominator that you are in every relationship, right? With your romantic person, with yourself, with your family, you take that into every relationship you go to. So we're not going to blame anybody else. We're not going to talk about the other people that are in this relationship. I think the most challenging thing for some people is to really realize how they've become this codependent person. It could be through learned behavior. It could be through lack of self-value and confidence, lack of self-esteem. And so what we do is we kind of grab onto somebody else and start thinking that our worth is dependent on what we do for these people. So it's a very broad subject, but today I'm going to touch on very specific things that I continue to see in my practice, and also make it pretty much kind of like this a marriage relationship. And I'm going to share a little more about how that works because we are literally grabbing our value from somebody else. It's not something that we can think about or say, oh, I made this coffee for this person, or I did this for this person, so now I feel valued. But if that person is no longer there, you'll find something else to do outside of you to bring that value. So my goal for you today is to really think about where in your life have you become codependent? And I'm going to kind of run through a few of these questions and I'll post them here later on. But I do want to educate you guys and letting you know that codependency is a response to trauma. Again, it's not something you just wake up and have one day, right? It's a response to something. And then I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples that I've seen that I can share with you guys to kind of realize what it is that's happening in your particular life. Maybe that can shine some light on like, oh gosh, this is happening. And then we'll just heal from it. That's all, right? Again, assessment, awareness, and then we heal. So if any of these apply to you, just take notes, right? As always, I love for you guys to have pencil, paper ready, just to kind of jot these things down. And what I'm also going to ask is what's happening now is when we're setting the intention to get these revelations, I'm going to ask that you guys hear for answers that come up, because we're not really understanding how it is that we're playing a role in these things until we understand who we are and why we do them. Once you have that awareness, then guess what? Life starts changing for you. And that's exactly what we want to do today, is have the awareness of the things that are taking place in your life, and you really digging into saying, hey, you know what? I think I want something different in my life. Even though this has been normal for however long, I need to break the cycle first for me. And then after you do that for you, you can start thinking about how you can help other people. We tend to do things backwards, myself included, before I knew better, right? That's what we do. We see something like, oh my gosh, my neighbor has that. Oh my gosh, my kid has this, or a friend has this, and we're very quick to look at it for other people. But I want you guys to really look at yourself. Talk about this topic to somebody who would care to listen to what it is and the awareness you have. So codependency also feels very shameful. It's not something you like to feel. You do it because it's kind of having like an itch. You have to scratch it, right? And they tell you don't scratch because you make it worse, but you do it anyway because you can't help yourself. So this is a type of a tendency or behavior that one may have, but they do feel shame around it. So I want you guys to be aware of that. Codependency is also a very unhealthy lifestyle, right? You focus on other people's problems and their feelings and their needs, and you kind of put yours to the side. And one can get that confused with somebody who's just always doing people's favor, but I want you to see where your value lies in that. And I've talked about it in the past about the importance of focusing on you first and then other people. This is a little more intense, and you'll know why in a few. It's people who are codependent are also very sensitive to criticism, right? So if you are in a codependent relationship and you do make this coffee for this person or whatever, and they tell you how horrible the coffee was, oh my gosh, like you literally want to fall apart because you did it with so much love and attention. And remember, the values attached to it. So I'm going to share a story. I had a client who bought me like Frappuccino coffee maker. And she was super excited about this coffee maker, told the family, whatever. So every time they would come over, she would make coffees for everybody because she just felt the need to. Hey, look at this coffee. What kind would you like? And everybody's kind of shooting out the orders. I want a caramel frap. I want a mocha. And, she's creating all these different coffees. What I noticed is on the side of her coffee machine, she had certain cups that were 12, 16 ounces or whatever. She would make that coffee for that person. Let's see, in this case, it was a caramel frappuccino. And there was a little bit left over. So she would fill their cup, whatever the ounces were, and the leftover in that blender, she would pour into a cup. So, excuse me, moving forward, after she made everybody else's coffee, she had this leftover cup with everybody's leftovers. So there was this cup, and again, every time there was leftover ounces, she would pour that leftover in this cup. And she sat and she shared with me that when she sat, she's like, well, I'm going to drink it because I'm too tired to make my own coffee. And so she did mention that all of a sudden, she just felt like she wasn't valuing herself enough and she was just getting all these leftovers. I said, yeah, your life, you are that cup of coffee with everybody else's leftovers. And she cried. She cried. I cried with her, right? I tend to do that. And it was the first time she realized that her dependence, her value, or whatever landed or was actually enwrapped in everybody else's joy. As long as everybody else is happy, I'm fine. This coffee tastes okay. I said, yeah, but what do you call it? It's a tutti frutti coffee. There's really no name for it. But she felt like it was okay for her to just drink that coffee. And it wasn't the first time she did it. She said she did it a lot. So she did it so much and she never realized it. But one day we're sitting talking about it and she shared how she felt while she had this cup of coffee. Like, wow, this is interesting. It's just everybody's leftovers. And so a lot of people do have that type of experience when it comes to a codependent relationship, right? As long as other people are happy, I'll do things by myself. Nobody needs to help me. I can do it myself. We get into this new norm that we create for ourselves, and it's all based around the lack of value you have for yourself. And the fact that you need somebody else to applaud you to, motivate you to even do anything. So I want you guys to think about stuff like that. But codependent people are also very responsible. So you really can't tell that they're codependent because they're handling their business, they're doing their thing, and they're just changing up all their lives and doing what they have to do. But it's always to accommodate everybody else. All right. Also, they wall off their own feelings. So it's very rare that you'll find somebody who's codependent that's complaining. They literally were just kind of like, this is my life. This is what I do. And they just keep going because that's just what they do. I know that in some of my coaching sessions, I've actually had clients who do everything for everybody else, start doing things for themselves. That's a homework assignment. And they laugh at their homework assignment because I give them, what they call very funny ones. But they're also very uncomfortable. So I know I've had, some wives and husbands that do very much for their, significant other, which they love doing. But when I ask them to not do certain things, to watch their patterns, they're very uncomfortable not doing it. So I had one client that, served her husband and her children before herself. So not only does she cook and clean, she was a stay-at-home mom, which I give massive kudos because I could not do it. I love to be, experimenting, traveling, doing a bunch of stuff, but you never get to clock out, right? Stay-at-home moms and dads, because I've had both. So I remember in this assignment, she was sharing about how she loves to feed her family, but I noticed there was some bitterness inside of her. And not like she didn't love doing it, but it was kind of a routine. So I remember giving her a homework assignment and telling her, I want you to serve yourself first when you create this meal. And she looked at me like it was the last thing she would ever do. Like, oh my God, that's so mean. That's so rude. That's so selfish. I mean, she had 1,000 things go through her head. And so she kind of looked at me and I knew she wasn't going to do it. And I said, and I also want you to send me a selfie when you serve yourself the first plate. So now I made her real nervous, right? And it's something so simple, right? Serve yourself first. Now, to me, it's simple. To those of us who don't do that, it's probably super simple, right? But when you ask somebody to get out of a pattern that they're used to, they start questioning why. Why if everything's fine? Well, if everything's so fine, why is it making you so emotional for you to serve yourself first? Why is it creating all these emotions, this confusion, this, oh my gosh? So I want you to ask yourself if there's any area in your life where you feel like it's just impossible to not do the things that you're doing for somebody else, to not do them first, or to think about yourself first. This client, I had her serve herself first and take a selfie, and she did, and there was so much sadness in her eyes. I got to see the energy around what she felt, what she saw, and I knew then that I had direction and where to take her to. And it started off with me asking her to serve herself a plate. They're very simple things, you guys, that we start doing to really get down into the root causes of many things. This client who had her awesome coffee maker that she had invested so much money in, I told her, can you do me a favor? Next time your family comes over, can you please prepare your coffee first? And she looked at me with these eyes like, oh my gosh, like, what does that mean? Like, what are people going to say? I'm like, wait a minute. What are you going to say? What are you going to think? And what are you going to feel? And so when we start swapping it around and start asking people to do things for themselves first, it's almost super frightening. It's terrifying for a lot of people. And those are the things that I need you guys to look at. We have been entangled in relationships with people and how we are making them responsible for not just our happiness, but our actually purpose in life. Like there are people that think if this person isn't around anymore, then they have no means, there's no reason for them to live. And that's how deep it can get, but it starts somewhere, right? So ask yourself these questions. Who are you around? If you need to do something, does somebody need to come with you? Is there has to be a reason behind it? Or can you just get an impulse and say, I'm going to do this, and then I just push out and do it, right? You need to be free of people's opinions. You need to be free of giving people the key to your value, right? That opens up the door, that opens up the value. You should be the only one that holds that key, and you get to turn that key whenever your soul desires, not when it's the right time, not when somebody gives you permission, but when you're feeling led to. So the goal is to understand the communication with self, right? The things that you're actually getting, asked to do within your spirit, right? Within your soul, because we all have messages that come in, but we're too busy trying to people please, and we're too busy trying to make sure that other people value us, that you're not even taking the time to think about how you're valuing yourself. And that's sad. It brings so much sadness to my heart, but I've learned to kind of understand why it happens. I've learned to help people get out of that by first understanding where they're at and then equipping them with the tools that they need to become more self-reliant. Because that's what we all need to do. It doesn't matter if you're in a good relationship, you should be self-reliant. You should be making yourself happy. You should be making yourself a priority. And some people are like, oh, it's my family, whatever. I get that. But if you're the battery that's fueling all these people, that you're the battery that's literally giving everybody a charge, what happens when your battery dies? The whole purpose behind you not resting or not taking care of yourself first is because your family, friend, and family say, okay, but what are we doing? Are we enabling the family? Are we enabling other people to not get up and do their own thing, right? We talk about that a lot. And what are you doing to yourself? Because I have moms and dads that do this all the time. They're people pleasing, whatever, my kids, whatever. What are you teaching your children? I know many times the children repeat the same patterns. Kids do what we do. They don't do what we tell them to do. So do other people. So again, we teach people how to treat us. And if you're not understanding what that looks like, I want you to dig deep and find out what it is. Because there are ways of finding out everything about ourselves, but you have to take the time and make yourself a priority. Write notes. I've been going through some training and activations, things the last couple weeks, and I've just been making voice memos. Just when I feel a certain way, I don't know what it is, when I have a dream, when I think, when I have an experience, I grab my phone and I just record a voice memo. Sometimes they're emotional, sometimes they're very straightforward. It doesn't matter. Sometimes I don't even listen to them. But I make sure that I record, that I document whatever I'm experiencing at the time. And if I feel led to, I'll go back and look at it, because that's what we need to do. A lot of people who are codependent, they don't ask for what they need. They never do. And if they do, it's a superficial need. It's a material need, not, hey, I need help with dinner. Hey, I need help with laundry. Hey, I need help with the finances. They won't. Because part of their value feels like if they can fix it on their own, they don't have to ask anybody, then that brings more value to them. Even if it breaks their head and they're stressed and they're lacking sleep, they just won't do it. They won't ask for it. And it's really sad, because I'm sure people out there would love to help them, but they're not communicating their needs. And that's what happens when you don't have this value for yourself. You can't communicate a need that you have, because then you think you're vulnerable, or you're not worth loving, or you're not worth keeping around. I mean, it's crazy. The thoughts go everywhere, right? So they give and give and give, even when it hurts. There were things that I used to do in the past, like I would do favors for people, and never thinking I was going to be attached to the outcome, but I was attached to the outcome. I would do things for somebody, and if they didn't say thank you, oh my God, I would get all butthurt. So I find that with people who are codependent, like they'll do those things, and if they get hurt, they'll never voice it. They'll just keep doing the same thing over and over again, because it's a pattern of no. And they say, well, at least it got done. Forget if I didn't sleep, at least it got done. I didn't have to ask anybody. I'm worthy. I got it done all by myself. So you'll notice that they'll give even when it hurts. So if you're someone who may think somebody's in this relationship, maybe you can encourage them by asking for help. Make sure you tell them that, hey, do you feel weird? Do you do this? Kind of ask these questions and see what they say. And again, many of them don't even realize it. So if you see that there's somebody who gives and gives and gives, and you know it hurts them because you can see it on their faces, especially if it's somebody you know and you care about, you can see it. We tend to say things like, just don't do it anymore. Ask for help. And man, if it was that easy, you guys, oh my gosh, the world would be a better place. We have to teach people how to do this. It's been something they've been doing for a long time. It's a habit. And some grew up watching this stuff, so they just keep doing it because it's a norm. And they just continue to do it over and over and over again. So codependency is one of the mental health diagnoses. They do put a diagnosis on somebody who meets certain criteria. But I do want you to know that even though there is a diagnosis, you can always change it. I believe you can change it all. I really do. And there's so much to prove that that's true. So we don't have to just rely on a diagnosis. We don't have to rely on, this is a label, I have to just learn to live with it. You don't have to learn to live with a damn thing you don't want to. You don't. And I'm a firm believer that you can change anything. And if you don't like the way your life is going, change it. You need help, call me. It's something we do all the time. I have to change patterns all the time. I was just talking to a client earlier, and we were drinking this drink to help us kind of relax or whatever. And we realized that we haven't been drinking it in a while. And it's like, what the heck? What happened? Like, we used to drink it all the time. And we used to have this need for it. Maybe it's the vibration that matches, and you start doing the things that align with you at that particular vibration. But as you change, you need something different. There was tinctures I used to take, and I used to take them and they were fine. And then I wanted to keep taking them after I did some healing and some training or whatever. And my jaw literally would lock. And it would be like, yeah, no, you're not taking that anymore. And I was forcing it down my throat, but my body was rejecting it. What happens, you guys, is when we're stuck in patterns, our body is very used to it. The brain, the body's just like, okay, here we go again, here we go again. But when you start changing things, your behaviors change. Your habits change. Things like your drinks and your tinctures just don't resonate with your body anymore. But you don't know that until you start changing things. So a lot of us can look at people and watch their lives and say they do the same thing every day. They wear the same type of clothes. They go the same way to work every day. They complain about the same things. It's always the same. Like, there are people that you can meet and it's like, holy crap, this is who they are. There's a whole bunch of stuff, you guys, that we can do when you understand your value. And I share this all the time. Like, when I have clients, God, they love harder. But first, they love themselves. They make more money. They get out of these relationships. They start asking why. They break their patterns. They break, their generational curses. They do all that. And it's not me. It's because they start understanding their value through the excavating process that we put them through. They start understanding why they created these patterns, why it's no longer healthy for them, why it's okay to change. They start getting steps revealed to them on where to start and where to keep going. That's just the way it works. And it's freaking automatic, because once you start making different choices, you get different results. And once you make one and you don't like it, you change it up and you change it up and you change it up. So you don't just stick to the same thing, you guys. We keep playing with things. I have clients that I've had for years where I would always say I would have them for 3 months and that's it. So my belief in the day was I help them heal up a whole bunch of their trauma, equip them, and then send them on their way. And then people started staying, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to help them now? And I started understanding that the more we change, the more help we need, because you're going through uncharted territory and you don't have anybody around you. There's nobody in your family modeling it. And that's probably the hardest thing for a lot of people, is that you start advancing and growing and glowing and, creating abundance for your life. But then you hang around with people, because you want to or not want to, and you see they're all kind of stuck in the same place. And you say, okay, first let me have grace for them, because everybody's doing what they know to do. I just learned to do different. And there's times in our walk where it's a little irritating, because you are the one making all the changes and the growing and the sacrifices. So there's many, many times where I talk to my clients, like, it's not fair, we're the ones. I said, I know it's not fair, but would you trade places with them? And the answer is always, hell no. I've worked too hard. I want to invite you to have that kind of life. The kind of life where you're understanding the value lies in you, from you, and only you. And you have to work towards that, because once you have that, nobody can ever take it away from you. And that's what we're seeking: self-sustaining skills, tools to create a life that you want to live today, tomorrow, and always, changing up the things that one time worked, now they don't. You'll learn new tools, they'll work for a while, and you're going to grow. You're going to be hungry. And guess what? You'll learn new stuff. It opens up new pathways. And sometimes we're scared crapless because we don't know what the hell it is and where we're going. But we learn to trust the process and say, if my intuition, if the healing has gotten me this far, and I'm grateful for where I am, I can only imagine how much more is on the other side. So be curious. Ask questions, yourself and others. Observe, just observe, you guys. And I promise you, you're going to be filled with so many messages that are going to help guide you in the right direction. And if you need support, you can always reach out. We are everywhere. Podcast every Tuesday and Thursday. I hope you guys have enjoyed the previous podcast where we interview our healing specialists, our practitioners that practice different modalities, no matter where you are in life. We're excited to be here for you guys on your now journey. to help you heal up your past journey and to also continue to create your new journeys. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. Have an amazing day, and we'll talk to you guys soon.